this is Sal from Sal's Tech, and today we're talking about the Ender 5 Plus and the Sprite Extruder that I installed onto this using the Sonic pad. We're using Klipper. We're getting some really good print speeds, and I'm going to go by step on how to install the Sprite Extruder. It works very well. The only thing you have to buy is the kit itself if you don't feel like going up for the Sonic pad. It can be used with Marlin if you like. It's not as fast, but it works. You're going to definitely have to write some code. You know, you're going to have to set some variables in Marlin, which isn't that hard. Or you can just use the Creality pad and you can get my firmware, which works perfectly. I'm going to do photos and instructions, verbal instructions throughout this, and I hope you stick through. And if you like what you're seeing and what you're learning, please subscribe. This is my new thing. I'm a different type of guy. I was a master tech for a bunch of years. I got sick from the coronavirus. It paralyzed me for 18 months, and I needed something to do. So I decided to take my skills and apply it to 3D printing. And I have a different way of looking at things because when I started doing automotive repair and racing at the time, there was no YouTube. There was none of this. The only way you did it is to figure it out on your own. You know, that's the way it worked. Either you figured it out or you didn't do it. There was no tech lines. There was no YouTube to watch. There was no phone calls to make. You sat there, you thought about it, and by the end of the time, you wound up being a fabricator. That's how most of these guys that you see on TV these days became fabricators, because there's no one to ask. You had to figure it out for yourself, and that's what I like doing. So to me, it's fun. So hopefully I can help you guys out with this. I hope you enjoyed the video, and leave your comments below. We'll go from there. Thank you so much. Talk to you guys later. So we're going to start here. We're going to remove the original transfer plate or hot end plate, and there are two mount screws or studs that are on there. You're going to take a pair of channel locks and you're going to twist them just so you can see the spot welds in the back. And you're going to take a die grinder and you're going to grind it down, and then those two tabs or the mount tabs are going to come right out. So you're going to repurpose the original mount plate for the hot end that was on the printer itself. Not only are we going to reuse it, we're going to flip it. The direction that was on, you're going to turn it 180 degrees backwards and remount everything that way. It gives you extra clearance for the new Sprite extruder and makes everything work really well. Best way I found to do it. I'm going to talk as I do this because I'm actually watching the video as I speak. The next step is coming, where we're going to have the Sprite extruder mount that comes in the kit. And what we're going to do to that, we're going to actually cut two tabs off of that where the two belt mounts are. We're going to remove them. The one side is on an angle. As much weight as we can get off is just easier. And the other side is straight across. And that's where your two tabs were for your belt mounts. For the, you know, if it was a CR10 or an Ender 3 or something like that, it would mount perfectly. But since we're doing with a Ender 5 Plus, that's why we're using the original hot end plate, or slide, or whatever you like to call it. That's what we're going to repurpose, and then we're going to mount everything together in one piece. There is a printed part for this online, but the speeds that you run, it's going to break, so I'd rather keep the original metal plate, which is much easier to use, and they're $8 to replace it if you're not happy about it. Or you could just remount the original hot end right to that. It works because the studs will still be there. In the next photo, you'll see what it should look like when it's mounted correctly. That's coming up now. You can see I just took the 3 screws that hold the V wheels and slid them right through both sides. There's plenty of room. The nylon nuts still work perfectly. Okay, so the way you see that, with reversing the plate, this is what it should look like on top of your printer. This is the correct way it should be installed. Then just to put the Sprite extruder itself on is 4 screws. It's no big deal. It goes directly on there, and I did relocate the BL touch. We had no choice at that point because the Sprite extruder itself is about twice the depth, well, as the original stock hot end in cage complete, and that's why they redesigned the hot end or the extruder for the new Ender 5 Pro that just came out with the direct drive, because there's not enough room with the upper bar, and we'll get to that in a little bit. And here comes the next photo, and I'll go over that as well. Now there's your cable support. You're going to have to unscrew those 2 screws that hold it in, remove the cable support, and put the 2 screws back in the way you see it. The cable support itself is just the exact same width as the locks for the cable itself. It's really good. It fits perfectly over it. You just take a wire tie and you lock it in place. Not only does it hold the cable in place nicely, but it takes the lock and hold it in. It just won't fly open while you're moving or anything like that. It works really well. And I use the Bowden tube, just for a feed because, there's no way to get the cable there unless you're hanging something off the ceiling in your place, and that's not worth it. So it draws instead of feeds on the Bowden tube on this. So it's not really a Bowden tube, it's just a tube at this point that you're drawing from. All right. I'm leaving a minute on each photo so you can see what it looks like and everything like that. This is where you move the BL touch. You can see where it was mounted, okay, which is a 36.5 millimeters offset, which is negative 36.5. Now it's 0. So the BL touch is exactly even with your nozzle. The offset is negative 47.5 where it's mounted, okay? So if you go into it, it's in my firmware that way, but if you're going to do a Merlin, it would be negative 47.5 and 0. And then that'll align your BL touch to the nozzle on the head. If it was stock, it would be negative 40 by negative 36.5 if you're going to leave it in the original place, but you really can't do that, and you'll see why. Because if you really look at that extruder is about twice the depth of the original, including the fan, that is. I took the original extruder bracket and repurposed it. I bent it up. It holds it far enough away from the head and everything like that. It doesn't interfere. You don't have to do this, but it was easier for me. It kept everything centered and the right length, and everything worked really well this way. So basically I just wide tied the cables and everything right to it. Works really well. It's got just enough length to get to each corner forward, and it works pretty well this way. And it looks good, actually. It's clean. And you can make any bracket you like. For me, I knew I was never going to put the original extruder back on there, so I just repurposed the bracket. It was just a lot easier at that point. Like I said, I left about a minute in each one of these photos to give you, instead of having to go back and forth and reading it. And you get a good look. Next, I took the X end stop and I moved it 5 millimeters to the right. Okay, that's just because the extruder itself, the offsets are a little different than the original hot end, which is normal because nothing's exactly the same. But the one thing that is cool is the hot end bracket for this extruder. You can put the original hot end right back on there, and you don't have to change anything. It'll screw right to it. It's still got the 2 tabs, which holds the extruder in place when you go to tighten it up. It's really nice. I guess Creality felt if you wanted to go back to the original hot end and play back and forth, they left it open like that, which is pretty cool. Okay, next is going to be wiring. Wiring's pretty simple on this thing. The cable itself really isn't long enough to go to the back of the casing. So what I did is I spread open the vent on the one side, enough for the pins and the connectors and plugs to slide through individually. I left it just spread a little bit, and it worked really, really well. Slides in. I took a wire tie on the inside so it can't be pulled out, and it locks it from being yanked through the case. So nothing tugs on the motherboard or anything like that. So I would definitely take a wire tie on the inside and lock it up against there. I didn't put a wire tie on the outside because nobody's going to shove it in. Most of the times if it gets hooked, they'll be being pulled, not pushed. So just to make sure there was no pressure, no yanking on the motherboard in any way, like I said, I locked it from the inside, so if you pull on it, the wire tie stops the cable from being pulled through the casing. So it works out pretty well. It's just very easy. The whole idea of doing this was to make it very simple and easy to install. The next picture is going to be a silent motherboard where the wiring goes in. Now I just put everything the way it has to go together so you have an idea. The first thing you have your hot end, which is your heater, which is your positive and negative, which is your first 2 wires right there. The next one is for your heater number 1. Now that's heater 0. The next set of wires is heater number 1. That's where you're going to put your fan for the head itself. That runs constant. And that's positive, negative. That's just the way it goes in. The next is your control fan, which is your cooling fan, which goes in that plug. Then you got your hot end thermostat, okay, which is where that plug goes in right there. So that's basically everything except for one wire that's next, okay, which is for the extruder itself. I also put a thing where you can see it's heater 0 and heater 1, and you can see it's positive and negative and where your hotbed would screw in. Just remove the wires you need to remove to replace the ones that you're putting in. Take a photo first. This way, if you mess up anything, you have something to go back to and look at other than this, because it's different inside the box. Next is your extruder wire. That goes to E0, okay? So you're going to remove your original extruder wire. Now listen to me, there's hot glue that holds these plugs in when they're inside these cases. I don't know why they put all this hot glue in there. I couldn't explain to you why, but if you don't peel that hot glue off before you go to pull that plug, you're going to have problems. And you'll either pull the harness or the plug out off the board or break the motherboard itself. So take a pair of the blue little clippers that you had that came with the printer and pull the hot glue off all the way around the plug before you try to remove that plug. Best way to do it. It works perfectly. You don't have to hurt yourself. You don't have to kill yourself. And everything works the way it should, as it should. And you don't do any damage to the board. And that's how it should be. All right. And then we'll be going to the next photo. Next is the filament spool. I have a Creality's Pro filament spool. It's on bearings, and I snugged the bolt that has the holder because it does pitch left to right. So depending on how you mount your printer itself, and depending on the room, if you don't have a lot of space on the back wall, you can move it to the side. If you don't have any space on the left side, you can move it to the back. We all know when you go to do this, if you're doing a big print on a helmet or something like that, where the original spool is, when you run out of filament and you go to change it, guess what? You can't. The bed's in the way. So this is a much better filament feed for me. Plus, it goes right to the sensor, which you see next, and it makes a big difference. There's less friction. It could draw faster, and at higher speeds, you don't want any friction in your filament. It works a lot better. Next is my filament runout sensor. I have it freely wired in. It's held on by a wire. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't move like crazy. I got the idea from my Ender 3 S1 Pro, okay, because it's loose fit on that as well. So while it moves and it extrudes through the boating tube on that, or the feed tube on that, it pushes backwards and it doesn't back feed through the sensor itself. It just moves it slightly. Which is the way it should be as far as I'm concerned. Otherwise, you're going to break filament. Especially if you're moving pretty quickly, it needs to move. If it's locked in one place, and that's a big bed, and to go straight down to the bottom the way it wasn't working for me. I didn't like it. This worked out really well, and this is like the third time I figured it out. I finally got it to where I was happy. And the next photo is something very simple. You're going to go to Thingsverse, and basically you're going to print out, if you buy the Sonic Pad, these two mounts. They go right on the bar for the printer itself, and it's a great mount. And the best thing about it is you just put the two top screws in and not the bottom ones. And if you're tall like I am, I'm 6'4", and you're standing there in front of the printer, you can actually tilt it up towards you because they'll be snug. It'll hold there, and you can do what you have to do instead of having to bend over and look. It works really well. I like it. It's just something that's nice and easy, and it's clean and looks good. And the next thing is where we're going to have to make a difference in the printer. And here it is. The upper bar has to be moved down 6 inches. And everybody's going to have a little thing about why you're moving this bar. It's really not that supportive. It's just two screws that hold it in. They're 5mm by 12s, okay? And they go screwed down. They don't go cross screwed into that bar, nothing. They go just screwed straight down. So basically, I moved this 6 inches down. I leveled it out with my micrometer, made sure it was square, bolted in there with 2 T-nuts, and it locks. Nothing moves, nothing rocks, nothing racks. Everything's perfectly fine.
The nice thing about it is when you go to level your bed and you're looking for your nozzle height, and we all know when you go look, you got a very small line of sight between that bar and the bed. So this works out really well. You can see directly in there. Not only that, with the sonic pad on there, you can mount your camera right there, and you got a perfect thing for your photos and your videos. It works for the time lapse. It's perfect. It mounts perfect. It stays nice and level. It works really well. It's a great mounting spot for the whole thing, and I'm happy with it. I'm pretty sure you will be too. And if you're really worried about if it's going to rack it, put some brackets in it. They sell them on, you can print them out on Thingiverse, and they have all kinds on there. It works out pretty well. You don't have to go nuts with it. It'll work really great. It's not a hard installation. Everything goes in 1, 2, 3, and that's pretty much it. That's about all you got to do. Well, we're at the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something from it. And if you did, please subscribe. If there's any questions you need to ask below, I will answer. If you need the firmware ask, I'll give it to you. It's free. I'm not charging anybody for any of this. It's something new for me. I needed something to do, so here we are. I hope you enjoyed everything, and you'll see the next video. We're going to do reviews. I do automotive tech questions. If you need anything on transmissions, I'm an ASE Master Tech. Anything on transmissions, car insurance. I ran my business for 20 years. You can ask me any question having to do technical or automotive questions when it comes to car insurance or claims or anything like that. I can help you guys. So anything you need to know, that's White Sal's Tech. We do it all. Talk to you guys later. Hope to see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.